NASCAR and pretty much every major sports league in the world is shut down at the moment, but for how long? We're going to try to answer that question on today's episode. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. I wish we were talking about Atlanta this weekend. You know, the Truck Series Bounty was supposed to start this weekend, or the Cup race. I wish we were talking about that, but no, instead we're going to talk more about, you know, the postponements, suspended seasons, all that unfortunate stuff. To catch you up on the news here in case you missed either my last couple of videos or if you just haven't read any of the news the last couple of days, which I find highly unlikely. Early yesterday morning, NASCAR made the late-breaking decision to postpone races at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend, as well as all the races at Homestead Miami Speedway next weekend. This is all in response to the COVID-19 outbreak that shut down a lot of businesses, a lot of sports leagues, of course, in the country, in the world over the last several weeks, even just the last several days, even the last just several hours, basically. All this being done for the sake of public safety and everything, trying to contain this thing so it doesn't spread and doesn't cause any more damage than it already has. But yes, NASCAR currently has postponed their next two Cup race weekends. And a lot of other sports leagues have postponed or even canceled a lot of their leagues. IndyCar has actually canceled a good handful of its races to start the season. I think all of their races through April right now are at the very least postponed. Some of them are canceled. Hasn't come to that yet for NASCAR, but that is always a possibility. So today I want to talk a little bit about how long this suspension could last, what's worst case scenario, what's best case scenario. I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to look at all of the evidence we have so far in front of us. I also want to talk about some other fun things, because there is some good news in the wake of all this bad news. I'll start with this. Podium Esports and iRacing are putting together the Replacements 100 this weekend, actually, Sunday here, 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, I assume, streamed live on Twitch. They're doing a big iRacing race, and look at the names involved. William Byron, Alex Bowman, Dale Earnhardt Jr. You got other Cup guys, Bubba Wallace. Then you got Xfinity guys like Allgaier, Harrison Burton, Justin Haley, Anthony Alfredo, Taylor, Gray Benroach, Truck Series guys. You even have non-drivers, TJ Majors. You got Chad Knaus is going to be racing in this thing. Look at these names. A star-studded event happening on iRacing. I'm not being paid to promote that at all. I just saw it on Twitter and thought, hey, that's pretty freaking cool. I'll be watching because there's nothing else on TV. But yeah, that'll be streamed live on Podium Esports' Twitch. I'll have to go find that. I don't go on Twitch that often, so I'll have to figure that out. But there you go. So people are still racing. Big names are still getting involved, promoting the sport even during this downtime, this down period. So that's pretty cool. Also, friend Ryan Vargas, he made some Xfinity Series starts last year. He's a great driver. He's also hinting at some big iRacing esports type event. He put this tweet out. He was doing a lot of work yesterday, it sounds like, getting a lot of people involved, hyped up for something maybe this coming Thursday night. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on that one. He sounds like he's putting together something pretty interesting as well. So even though there's no real cars racing on track, a lot of your favorite NASCAR personalities are still hard at work, are still promoting the sport the way they always have. So really cool to see. So there is some good news in the wake of all this ominous kind of bad news. But now I do want to talk about real race cars here, because NASCAR Cup Series, Trucks, Xfinity Series, they will be back. When? Not entirely sure just yet, but that's what we're here to look at today. We're here to speculate and maybe offer our best educated guess as to when NASCAR could come back. We're going to look at some other sports leagues. We're going to look at a lot of details here to determine when we could see real race cars back on the racetrack once again. There's a lot of things at play here. Things, of course, continue to change very, very fast on a day-to-day basis, not just in the NASCAR world, but just in the overall world in general these days. News is traveling extremely fast. Things are changing very quickly, so this video honestly might become irrelevant in less than 24 hours, but that's what we're gonna do it anyways. We're gonna go and give it our best shot. So for starters, I was reading some articles. Charlotte Observer did this good one. A bunch of NASCAR fans are still camped out at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend, even though there's no racing. People in their campers, you know, they're hanging out, having a grand old time over there in Hampton, Georgia, despite no racing happening whatsoever. This is a pretty interesting read. A lot of those fans kind of just sort of the mindset of, we're here, might as well stick it out. I mean, Atlanta's already offering refunds, or at the very least credit towards, you know, future races at Atlanta or other SMI races, so they're not really losing anything by being there. Just having a grand old time. Some interesting quotes in there. A few fans shared the sentiment. They were kind of disappointed that NASCAR ultimately decided to cancel or postpone the racing this weekend, especially after all the teams and drivers and crew guys and officials were already there. They all got there Friday morning, only to then be told that the race was postponed and to go home. At that point, a lot of the fans seemed to think, hey, everyone's here already. why not just run the race? Everyone's already kind of come into contact with each other and sort of been exposed as a big group. Like, at that point, why not just run the race even if there's no fans in the stands? I guess I understand that sentiment, but there's another quote here, another Charlotte Observer article. This one was talking about, or talking to IndyCar CEO Mark Miles. He offered some more insight into at least IndyCar's reasoning behind canceling their upcoming races. NASCAR has not put out any like individualized statements. They have not let any of their executives come out and make specific comments. They just had that one big press release yesterday. But here's IndyCar CEO Mark Miles kind of offering some insight into IndyCar's mindset when it came to canceling races, and I think NASCAR probably shared a lot of the same interests here. Miles cited golf's decision to cancel a PGA tournament in the middle of the tournament, just shut it down midway through. He also cited the fact that theme parks such as Disney, Universal, they have announced closures recently. He said that all indicated that any sort of public gathering just should not proceed in wake of all these closures. He said, really, there isn't a sporting event left that feels comfortable running, even without fans. We just felt like it was the right thing to do to not allow the opportunity for the racers to go racing here. In that article, it's explained that IndyCar is very hopeful that they can start their season in May with the Indianapolis Road Course and then, of course, the Indianapolis 500. That would be a huge blow to that sport if those races were affected, but we'll see how long this thing lasts. That is May. That is 2 months away until the Indy 500, but the Indy 500 does bring in over 300,000 spectators. That is like the largest single-day sporting event in the country, so I'm sure Roger Penske's keeping his fingers crossed. But that's just IndyCar. That's not NASCAR's statement specifically, but I tend to think NASCAR is probably thinking the same way. They announced Thursday that they were going to run Atlanta and Miami with no fans, and then less than 24 hours later, they announced that they were not going to run those races at all. And I think a lot of that was kind of due to some of the things Mark Miles was talking about there, the fact that really all other public gatherings of any size or scale or scope are being shut down, and a NASCAR race, even without fans, is still going to see 500, 600, 700 people there, because you got a lot of teams, because you had all three series there. You have a lot of crew guys, drivers, obviously, officials, track personnel. People just needed to help maintain order there. That's still hundreds of people that are going to be gathered. Yes, it's kind of a controlled group. Everyone, it kind of has to be screened, I guess, before coming. Like, yes, it's a controlled group, but it is a very large group, and a lot of cities and states are starting to ban large public gatherings that that are smaller than that number. So I think I understand NASCAR's decision behind making that choice. Reason behind making that decision, I can't talk today. Anyway, but that was IndyCar's explanation. NASCAR, again, has not given their specific reason as to why they made these postponements, announced these postponements, but I think it's probably similar to theirs. So how long will we be without NASCAR racing? How long will it take until those cars are going in circles again? Racer.com had some interesting quotes from Joe Gibbs Racing VP Jimmy Makar about this topic. Jimmy said, "We know we've got 2 weeks," citing Atlanta and Homestead, obviously, as 2 races that have already been postponed. "I think if everyone is realistic with what's happening, we haven't seen the peak of this thing yet. So it's probably a pretty safe bet we're going to go a few more weeks than just the 2. In that article, he also explains that Joe Gibbs Racing is currently focused on preparing their race cars for Texas and for Bristol, which are about 2 and 3 weeks out. As of now, NASCAR has not made any changes to those race weekends. Texas is expected to go off as usual with fans. All races, all series are going to be there. Bristol, same thing the following week. Obviously, things could change. I know the Fort Worth government has already put a limit on the size of crowds that can gather, but I don't think they have. I mean, the Texas Motor Speedway race is March 27th, and so I believe Fort Worth has only put a limit on the size of crowds for the couple weeks before then. So I don't think they've actually decided yet what rule is going to be in place by that weekend. So Texas Motor Speedway is still monitoring the situation closely, but as of now, the Texas race is supposed to happen, and the Bristol race the week after is supposed to happen, but obviously this JGR VP here does not believe that will be the case. He believes that those races will at the very least be run without fans, and quite possibly will also be postponed alongside Atlanta and Homestead Miami. So if that's the case, we're talking potentially 4 weeks, basically almost a full month of no NASCAR racing. Makar also mentioned that if the hiatus does go past Homestead, as in if it does last for 3-4 weeks, goes into Texas, goes into Bristol, that Joe Gibbs Racing specifically at least will need to start looking at things such as salaries, paid time off, travel expenses, that type of stuff, because at that point a lot of their workers will not be working anymore, because at that point there's not going to really be any work for them to do because there's no racing happening. I mean, they've prepared the cars, now you just got to kind of wait for the races to happen. So hopefully it does not come to that, because that's the point where it does sound like for even a lot of the big teams, money will become tighter, there will be financial strain put on the race teams. I'm sure for a lot of these smaller teams currently, like small Xfinity or truck teams, even now with just missing one race, I'm sure there is some financial strain, or at the very least some concern with a lot of those teams. But it does sound like Joe Gibbs Racing, one of the biggest operations in the Cup Series in NASCAR, it sounds like even they will be forced to make some tough decisions or move some things around if this hiatus lasts more than just a couple weeks. So that is concerning, but it's not entirely unexpected. I mean, the entire world economy pretty much is on pause at the moment until this thing kind of gets settled down a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but it does sound like JGR at least is not super optimistic that they will get this thing sorted out by the end of this month. So keep that in mind. With that being said though, let's look further. After Texas and Bristol, there is a week off. NASCAR does have its first scheduled week off. Now, hopefully, I'm sure if a lot of these kind of bans, a lot of these quarantines and things like that are kind of lifted, I'm sure NASCAR is hoping that maybe in that week off they could still run one of the Texas or Bristol races, or maybe Homestead, or maybe Atlanta. I'm sure with all these weeks off we're getting right here, there's not going to be a whole lot of weeks off later in the season because NASCAR is going to be trying to move a lot of their postponed dates to those free weekends. At least that's my theory. Don't know that for sure. But technically, after Bristol, there is a scheduled week off before Richmond and then Talladega. And that wraps up all the races between now and the end of April. The first race of May is Dover. I believe that is the that is May 1st through 3rd, or 2nd through 3rd. I don't know what early May. So the reason I mentioned Richmond and Talladega, right now let's look at some other major sports leagues. The NBA has already announced that they are planning to suspend their season for at least 30 days, and that's going back, retroactively to a couple days ago, but 4 weeks at least from now that the NBA will be on hold, which means that we will not see basketball games again until mid-April at the earliest. Major League Baseball has put a similar number on their on the length of their hiatus. They're expecting about 4 weeks, so both baseball and basketball, don't expect anyone to hit the court or hit the field again until at least mid-April, which would swallow up Texas and Bristol if NASCAR was to follow suit with that idea. No fans, no races until mid-April. Bye-bye Texas, bye-bye Bristol for the time being. Now, of course, this whole virus that we've been talking about, it originated in China. So if we go back to China, the Chinese Basketball Association suspended its play in mid-January, and it is planning to resume activity here in April. So at the end of the day, it's going to be about a 10-week hiatus that the Chinese Basketball Association observed. 10 weeks. For the Chinese Basketball Association. Obviously, with all these closures, with all these leagues suspending, with all these governments, making sure that no large gatherings take place or limiting the size of things dramatically, obviously, the United States as a country is really attempting to shorten that time span. They're hoping it will not take 10 weeks to contain this thing, or to at least start to see the numbers dwindle a little bit. But 10 weeks is what I see as possibly the worst case scenario. That is about 2 months, a little more than 2 months actually, that we could be without any major sporting events taking place. Or at the very least, we won't have sporting events probably with large amounts of fans in attendance. That's the worst case. 10 weeks. It's more than 2 months. Now, if that's the case, if we actually go 10 weeks with no races at all, I mean, I would hope that at least some of those they could run maybe just without fans in attendance, so you could at least get the races out of the way, get them on TV, get at least some of that going. But say we did go 10 weeks with no racing, I believe there would have to be some cancellations in there, because you just can't make up. I mean, that'd be approximately 9 races. I guess the All-Stars would be swept up. Maybe you just cancel the All-Stars. I don't know, so maybe 8 races. I don't know. I don't see any way NASCAR makes up 8 races later this year. That's just, I don't see that being realistic. And at that point, it would be really bad for the sport if we missed 8 races and were forced to cancel at least some of them. It would be really bad for the tracks. It would be really bad for the broadcast partners. And of course, it would be really bad for the teams and the people who work for these race teams. It would be really bad. There's no other way to say it. That would be bad. Bad, bad, bad. I'm just going to keep saying bad. I don't have any better words. Bad. I mean, we're talking Dover, we're talking Martinsville, we're talking obviously the All-Star race and the 600, we're talking about Kansas, maybe even Michigan, the first Michigan race. We're talking about a lot of races that would be in jeopardy if this closure, if this suspension lasts as long as it possibly could. I do think 10 weeks is probably the worst case scenario. I don't think it's going to come to that. I wouldn't predict 10 weeks, but I'm just letting you guys know that that is probably worst case scenario. More realistic, I would say it's less than that. Keep in mind that one of the reasons NASCAR and IndyCar were planning on running their races without fans in attendance at first is mainly due to the fact that, the drivers are isolated, and yeah, there are a lot of crew guys and everything. That's ultimately why they suspended operation. But unlike the NBA, which suspended operation almost immediately the moment one of their players was tested positive for the virus, in the NBA, you got a bunch of guys bumping up against each other, hitting each other, grabbing each other, all that type of stuff every single night. That's a lot of germs being spread, a lot of invasion of your personal space there. Not a very good job of social distancing. But in NASCAR, Joey Logano is in his own little world for 3.5 hours. Kevin Harvick is in his own little world for 3.5 hours. He's not having any contact with anybody. So the competitors, at least some of the competitors in racing, are relatively safe from the virus while they're competing. Obviously the crew guys, other people, officials, track personnel, they are not safe, which is why NASCAR ultimately decided to postpone these races. But that's why I would say if, say, things start to become a little bit steadier, or things start to get a little bit more under control the next few weeks, we could at the very least see NASCAR run some races, maybe without fans in attendance, but at least we would probably see some races run here within the next month or so. But again, it's all speculation at this point. I'm trying to look at other leagues and kind of gauge where everyone's at to maybe give you guys an idea. If I had to guess, here's my prediction right here, right now. Obviously, Homestead and Atlanta, these 2 weekends are postponed. I think those will stay postponed. I think NASCAR will try to run them later in the year, maybe a midweek race. Bob Pockris had a good idea, I saw. Assuming this doesn't last for 10 weeks, say the week of the Coke 600, instead of running the All-Star race the weekend before the 600, run the All-Star race maybe on like a Thursday night before the 600, and that free weekend beforehand, maybe that's where you run Atlanta. It's just a few hours down the road from Charlotte, so wouldn't be too crazy for the teams to get there and then get back in time for the All-Star race in the 600. That could be cool, and it's a good way of NASCAR once again testing midweek races perhaps by putting the All-Star race maybe on a Thursday night. I like that idea, so hopefully this doesn't last for 10 weeks and we can make that a reality, because that would definitely I think that would be doable. I think that could work. But anyway, my prediction, yeah, obviously Atlanta and Homestead are not going to be run as intended. I do think Texas and Bristol will, I think they'll be postponed. I don't think they're going to run those without fans. I think Texas and Bristol will be postponed. But I think, again, NASCAR will try to run those later in the year. You got 4 races there that NASCAR need to run later in the season. They have some scheduled time off in the summer. I think they had a 2-week break that was originally for the Olympics. Don't know if that's going to still happen, but NASCAR will have that 2-week break. Yeah, it's in the middle of the NBC portion of the season, and these are Fox races that would need to be moved over there. So I don't know how realistic that would be, but I do think that would be possible. So I'm thinking there's going to be 4 races probably postponed. That's my guess. I think this is going to last a month. You look at what the NBA and the MLB are doing and other sports leagues are doing, they're all looking at about a month, and a lot of them say at least a month. I do think NASCAR will try to get on track faster than a lot of those leagues will end up getting back on the field or on the court, but I do think NASCAR will be more or less on hiatus for probably close to a month. That's my prediction. Obviously, none of that's been proven. Right now, Texas Motor Speedway in 2 weeks is expected to go off as usual, business as usual. Bristol is expected to be just as normal as ever. But that's just my feeling. I don't want to discourage you guys. If you live in Texas, you plan on going to race, go buy your tickets. Worst case, they'll give you a refund. You'll get your money back. But I'd love to go to Texas. I really want to go to Texas. I would love to go to Bristol, but it's tough right now. I'm not super confident at the moment that those races are going to be run as scheduled. So that's just my prediction. I've given you guys as much reference or as much evidence as I possibly can here, but let me know what you guys think down in the description. Based on maybe what knowledge you have, do you think that NASCAR will run Texas and Bristol as scheduled? Do you think those races will be run without fans? Do you think they'll be postponed altogether? How long do you think this suspension will last? I think it's going to go about 4 weeks. I do think after that week off, which maybe they're able to run Atlanta or something, or Miami maybe, I do think starting with Richmond and then Talladega, I expect those races, I think we'll be back to normal by then. I think they'll have done a pretty good job of getting this contained within the next month, but really it's anybody's guess. I'm just a guy sitting in my room here kind of just chilling. I've been reading all the news on my phone all the time, but I don't really have any extra information than anybody else, so I'm just going with my gut more than anything here. But let me know what you guys think, of course. Not a lot else we can do during this off time then just discuss the sport, give our thoughts, give our opinions, speculate a little bit. That's always fun. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, subscribe if you're new. Even during this little hiatus, we will be doing videos all throughout the week, every week. So subscribe if you like talking about race cars that go in circles. We do that here, so you're in the right place. Subscribe if you're new. Big thank you, of course, to my Patreon supporters. Could not do this show without the support of all of you guys over there on Patreon, so thank you all a ton for your continued support of the channel. Once this whole hiatus clears up, once the suspension ends and everything, I'm hoping to get back to some more racetracks later in the year, so I really appreciate your support. Makes that really possible, and I love doing good content for you guys out on the road, on the ground, in the front line, so to speak. So thank you all a ton for your support on Patreon. Really means a lot to me. Should have some videos up later this week. I am traveling. My spring break is coming up, so I'm going to be visiting some family a little bit. So I'll still get some videos up for you guys, of course, but I will see you all again very soon. Stay safe out there. We'll keep washing your hands, stay clean, and have fun. As much fun as you can, I guess, without NASCAR. Hopefully we'll be back soon. Hopefully my prediction's wrong. Hopefully Texas we're good to go and everything's great. Texas is tough, man. If anyone can run this race during a pandemic, it's Texas. I don't know, but thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.